Your person took your photo to a psychic, and their love for you died the moment the psychic revealed that you are my beloved child. Your person never expected a single photograph to destroy everything they thought they knew about you. They walked into a dimly lit room carrying your picture with hopeful hands, convinced the psychic would confirm the future they had been dreaming about for so long. Instead, the silence that followed felt heavier than any answer. The psychic stared at your face far longer than expected, then slowly pushed the photo away as if it carried a truth too dangerous to touch. Your person smiled nervously, waiting for reassuring words, but none came. The psychic whispered something so quietly that your person leaned closer, and in that instant, the warmth in their eyes disappeared. Their heart didn't break because they stopped caring. It shattered because they suddenly believed they had never truly known who you were. They left without asking another question, clutching your photograph tighter than before, yet unable to look at it again. Why would a single sentence erase feelings that had survived countless doubts? Don't skip, because the answer begins with a secret your person never imagined existed. On the journey home, they replayed every memory with you as though each one had become suspicious overnight. Every smile seemed to hide another meaning. Every kind word suddenly felt like part of a puzzle they had failed to solve. The psychic had never said you were evil. They had never claimed you wanted to cause harm. What they revealed was far more unsettling because it challenged everything your person believed about destiny itself. They were told that loving you would demand a sacrifice they were not prepared to make, and fear quietly disguised itself as wisdom. Without realizing it, your person confused protection with rejection. They convinced themselves that walking away was the only safe choice. Yet as the hours passed, something refused to make sense. If the psychic's revelation was meant to save them, why did every step away from you feel heavier than the last? Why did guilt grow stronger instead of relief? Stay till the end, because someone else overheard that mysterious conversation, and their silence may change everything. That hidden witness couldn't forget the expression on the psychic's face after your person left the room. It wasn't relief. It wasn't satisfaction. It was regret. Long after the door had closed, the psychic picked up your photograph once more and quietly admitted that there was still one truth they had intentionally refused to reveal. Not because it was false, but because revealing it too early could completely alter the path both of you were walking. Meanwhile, your person was already making painful decisions based on only half the story, believing distance was the only answer while unknowingly moving exactly where fate expected them to go. Every unanswered message, every moment of silence, every sudden change in their behavior traced back to that unfinished reading. But hidden inside the words the psychic never spoke was a revelation so unexpected that, if your person ever discovers it, everything they believed died that day could come back to life in a way neither of you could have imagined. The strangest part of that day wasn't what the psychic revealed, it was what they refused to explain. Hours after your person disappeared into the night, the psychic remained seated, your photograph still resting on the table. Their fingers hovered over it as though they were debating whether they had made a terrible mistake. They quietly admitted to themselves that fear had entered the reading, and fear always changes the meaning of the truth. Your person had only heard the warning, never the reason behind it. That missing piece transformed caution into heartbreak. While your person believed they were protecting themselves by letting go, they had unknowingly stepped into a story built on misunderstanding. The more they tried to forget you, the more vivid your face became in their mind. Why couldn't they silence thoughts of someone they had already decided to leave behind? Days passed, but peace never arrived. Instead, small moments began to disturb them in ways they couldn't explain. They would hear your favorite song in unexpected places. They would catch themselves reaching for their phone before remembering they had promised never to contact you again. Even strangers seemed to remind them of your smile. Every attempt to move forward pulled them back toward the same unanswered question: what had the psychic truly seen in you that made love seem impossible? Eventually, curiosity became stronger than fear. They almost returned for another reading, desperate to hear the part that had been left unsaid. But before they could make that decision, an unexpected visitor arrived at the psychic's door carrying another photograph. One connected to your past in a way your person never could have predicted. The psychic recognized that second photograph instantly, and the color drained from their face. For the first time in years, they refused to perform a reading. Instead, they whispered that the two photographs belonged to the same unfinished story, separated by time but tied together by a single hidden truth. The visitor demanded answers, insisting your name had surfaced again and again in places where it shouldn't have. Suddenly, the psychic realized the warning given to your person had never been about your character at all. It had been about a choice that was still approaching, a choice capable of changing every relationship connected to you. If your person learned the complete truth before that moment arrived, everything could still change. But if someone else reached them first, they might walk away forever, without ever realizing the greatest deception wasn't about you. It was about what they had been led to believe. Before dawn, your person finally gave in to the question that had haunted every waking moment. They returned to the psychic's door expecting certainty, but instead found hesitation. The psychic looked exhausted, as though they had spent the entire night wrestling with a decision they could no longer avoid. Without saying a word, they placed your photograph back on the table beside the second one. Your person immediately noticed something they had missed before. The two photographs had been positioned facing one another, almost as if the psychic believed they belonged together. "Why?" your person whispered. The psychic closed their eyes and admitted there was one detail they had deliberately hidden. They feared that revealing it too soon would cause your person to choose fear over understanding, and judging by everything that had happened since, that fear had already taken control. The psychic explained that the moment they looked into your eyes through that photograph, they didn't see someone destined to bring heartbreak. They saw someone whose presence would force every hidden lie surrounding your person to rise to the surface. Some relationships would collapse. Some trusted faces would disappear. Some comforting illusions would never survive. That was the sacrifice they had warned about. Not losing you, but losing the false world your person had unknowingly built around themselves. Yet your person had misunderstood the warning completely. Instead of preparing for the truth, they ran from the very person who could help them face it. Their hands began to shake as memory after memory returned. Conversations that once seemed ordinary suddenly carried different meanings. Strange advice from certain people. Unexpected pressure to leave you behind. Coincidences that no longer felt like coincidences. Stay with this story, because one forgotten conversation was about to expose the first crack in a much larger deception. As your person searched through old messages later that evening, one exchange froze them in place. It had arrived just days before the visit to the psychic, a brief message from someone they deeply trusted, urging them to stop asking questions and move on. At the time, it had seemed harmless. Now it felt strangely timed. Why had that same person become unusually interested in keeping the two of you apart? Why had they encouraged the psychic visit in the first place? A chilling realization began to settle over your person. Perhaps the psychic hadn't been the first person trying to shape their decisions. Perhaps someone had quietly been guiding every step long before that reading ever happened. And if that was true, then the most dangerous secret had never been hidden inside your photograph. It had been hiding in plain sight, wearing the face of someone your person trusted completely. A single name refused to leave your person's mind. The more they replayed recent events, the more impossible it became to ignore the pattern. Every time the connection between the two of you had grown stronger, that same trusted individual had appeared with another warning, another distraction, another reason to doubt. At first, it had seemed like genuine concern. Now it felt carefully timed. Your person gathered old messages, remembered forgotten conversations, and noticed details they had overlooked for months. The advice had always pointed in one direction, away from you. But why? If you truly were the danger, why had someone worked so hard to make sure your person reached that conclusion before discovering the complete truth? That question refused to let them sleep, and before sunrise they made a decision they never thought they would make. They would confront the psychic one final time, but this time they would demand every hidden detail. The psychic didn't look surprised when your person returned. It was almost as if they had been expecting this moment all along. Without waiting for a question, they opened an old journal filled with handwritten notes from readings they had never shared with anyone. Your person's heart pounded as they noticed one page marked with the exact date of their first visit. Several lines had been crossed out, as though someone had tried to erase them forever. The psychic slowly admitted that the reading had been interrupted, not by a voice in the room, but by fear of what the full truth would set into motion. They had seen that someone close to your person would do everything possible to keep the two of you apart because your meeting threatened a secret that had remained hidden for years. It wasn't jealousy alone. It wasn't simple disapproval. It was something far deeper, something connected to a choice made long before either of you realized your lives had become intertwined. Something huge is waiting for you, because the next clue changes everything. As your person prepared to leave, the psychic handed them a sealed envelope they claimed should never have existed. "Don't open this until you're completely alone," they whispered. "Once you read what's inside, you can never see the past the same way again." Confused and shaken, your person carried the envelope home, resisting the urge to tear it open immediately. Hours later, with the room silent and the doors locked, they finally broke the seal. Inside wasn't a prediction. It wasn't a warning. It was a single photograph they had never seen before. The image showed you standing beside someone your person knew incredibly well, but the date written on the back proved that meeting had happened years before anyone claimed you had ever crossed paths. In that instant, your person realized the biggest lie had never come from the psychic, it had come from someone who had been hiding the truth since the very beginning. The photograph slipped from your person's trembling hands, but their eyes never left it. The date on the back couldn't be ignored. It proved that someone had rewritten the history of your connection long before either of you believed your story had begun. Every explanation they had accepted suddenly collapsed. Why had this meeting been hidden? Why had no one ever mentioned it? The more they stared at the image, the more another detail emerged. The person standing beside you wasn't smiling. Their expression carried quiet concern, almost as if they already knew a difficult choice was waiting in the future. Your person turned the photograph over again, hoping for another clue, and noticed faint handwriting beneath the date that had nearly faded away. When the truth returns, everything changes. Those 6 words refused to leave their mind. Determined to uncover the missing years, your person began searching through old records, forgotten photographs, and conversations they had never thought were important. Every discovery pointed toward the same unsettling conclusion. Certain memories had been carefully redirected, not erased completely, but buried beneath newer stories that were easier to believe. Even people who genuinely cared had unknowingly repeated the same version of events, as though they had all been handed identical pieces of an incomplete puzzle. Then another coincidence appeared. A location visible in the background of that mysterious photograph matched a place your person had visited many times without realizing its connection to you. They rushed there, expecting only questions, but instead found an elderly caretaker who recognized your face immediately. Without hesitation, the caretaker whispered, "I wondered how long it would take before someone came looking for the real story." The caretaker led your person to a small locked cabinet filled with forgotten keepsakes left behind years earlier. Most of them meant nothing, until one carefully folded letter appeared with your name written across the front. It had never been mailed. It had never been opened. The caretaker explained that someone had insisted the letter remain hidden because the timing wasn't right. Your person hesitated before unfolding the fragile paper, unsure whether they were about to uncover hope or heartbreak. The very first sentence sent a chill through the room. "If you're reading this, then someone has finally discovered the lie that separated us." But before your person could continue, they heard slow footsteps approaching from behind, and a familiar voice quietly asked, "Who gave you permission to open that letter?" The voice echoed through the quiet room, and your person froze before turning around. Standing in the doorway was the very individual they had trusted without question for years. There was no surprise on their face, only disappointment that the hidden letter had finally been found. They slowly stepped closer and glanced at the paper in your person's shaking hands. "You weren't supposed to see that," they said calmly, as though protecting a secret mattered more than telling the truth. The caretaker remained silent, watching carefully, because they understood this moment had been waiting for years. Your person demanded one simple answer. "Why did you hide this from me?" Instead of responding immediately, the visitor looked toward your photograph and whispered, "Because once you learn who this letter was really written for, there's no going back." The room fell into an uneasy silence before the truth began to unfold one careful sentence at a time. The hidden letter had never been meant to separate you from your person. It had been written to protect both of you from a chain of decisions that had already begun long before your paths crossed. But someone had intercepted it, convinced that keeping the two of you apart was the safest option. Fear had spread from one person to another until it sounded like undeniable truth. The psychic had seen only the consequences of that fear and warned your person about the painful road ahead, never realizing they were looking at the aftermath of a choice someone else had already made. Suddenly everything connected. The missing years, the mysterious photograph, the unfinished reading, and the constant pressure to walk away from you. Yet one question remained unanswered. If the deception had started so long ago, who had convinced everyone that it was necessary in the first place? Your person unfolded the final page hidden inside the letter, believing there couldn't possibly be another surprise. But tucked behind it was a small note written in different handwriting, added much later than the original message. It contained only one sentence: "Do not let them discover the truth before the second envelope is opened." Your person looked up in confusion. Second envelope? The caretaker's expression changed instantly. They admitted there had always been another envelope, sealed on the same day as the first, but it had disappeared years ago. No one knew who had taken it, or what it contained. Then the trusted visitor quietly closed their eyes and confessed something that changed everything once again. "I know where the second envelope is, but if you open it, you'll finally understand why everyone believed your love had to end before it could ever truly begin." A heavy silence settled over the room after that confession. Your person searched the visitor's face, hoping to find even the smallest sign of deception, but what they saw instead was regret that had been carried for far too many years. "Then take me to it," your person said without hesitation. The visitor nodded, though every step they took seemed burdened by memories they wished they could erase. They traveled to an old house that had stood empty for years, a place your person had passed countless times without ever imagining it held a piece of your story. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard was a weathered wooden box. Inside rested the second envelope, untouched but carefully preserved. Before handing it over, the visitor quietly warned, "This isn't just another letter. It's the reason everyone believed losing you was easier than facing the truth." Your person's hands trembled as they slowly broke the seal, knowing there would be no returning to the life they once understood. The first page didn't contain predictions or mysterious symbols. It contained names. Familiar names. People your person had trusted for guidance, comfort, and honest advice. Beside each name was a date, followed by short notes describing conversations that had quietly shaped every important decision. One after another, your person realized those conversations matched the exact moments when doubt had entered the relationship. None of them had forced a decision. They had simply planted fear, allowing it to grow naturally until it felt like their own conclusion. The realization was almost unbearable. Their choices hadn't been stolen, they had been carefully influenced. Then, near the bottom of the page, one sentence stood apart from the rest. "The truth must remain hidden until both hearts are ready to survive it." Who had written those words, and why had everyone obeyed them without question? Stay with this, because the final page carried a revelation no one had dared to speak aloud. As your person unfolded the last sheet, a small photograph slipped onto the floor. It wasn't another picture of you. It was a photograph of the psychic, taken many years earlier, standing beside someone whose face had been deliberately torn away. Written on the back were only 8 chilling words: "The answer was never in the future, it was in the missing witness." Your person suddenly understood why every clue had felt incomplete. Every reading, every hidden letter, Every warning had been pointing towards someone who had vanished from the story entirely. The psychic hadn't been protecting a prophecy. They had been protecting the identity of the one person who knew exactly why your lives had been pulled apart. And just as your person looked up from the photograph, a phone resting inside the wooden box began to ring for the very first time in years, its screen displaying